Greetings from the kitchen, folks. Today I'm going to be making a lavender mead. So as it's a mead, the key ingredient is honey. I've got 2 jars of this honey, which is 454 grams a jar, and 2 jars of this honey, which is 340 grams a jar, shrinkflation. They were the same price. I've got 4 litres of water, spring water, because the tap water in Leeds is a bit chloriney. My yeast of choice today is Lavender ICV D47, which is meant to leave sweeter flavours than the EC1118 that I normally use. A couple of tea bags, and out there in my garden, under the plum tree at the back left, there is some lavender growing. I'll be going to get that very shortly. But first of all, I need to make a cup of tea. And when I say a cup of tea, I mean a pan of tea, of course. So I've got my tea bags in. I'm just going to add about 1 litre of the spring water. That will do. So it's gas on and heat on, and I'm now going to bring this to the boil. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go and get some lavender. So there's my lavender. It's getting towards the end of its growing season, but I can still get enough from that. Okay, let's have a look. I'm looking for flowers which have got the most purple and the least amount of dry bits on. So some of these have already gone a bit too dry. Some of them are all right. What it means is I'll need to pick a little bit more than what I would have normally done at the height of the season. But it's no bother. So, smells delightful, as you can imagine. Hopefully not too pungent. This is now simply going in there. So I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm going to leave this now for 5 minutes and let it boil a little bit. Let all that steam build up in there and the tea bags release their tannins. Okay, this has been bubbling away now for 5 minutes. I'm going to take the heat off and take that off. Yep, the kitchen definitely smells of lavender. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a mash. I want to release the flavours and the smells. In case you're wondering why I've got tea bags in there, they create tannins, and whilst that's not essential in a mead, it will give the end drink a bit more body, a bit more flavour and a bit more mouthfeel. Okay, I'm going to try and remove the solid matter from the pan. I'll just give it a squeeze to get any last bits of flavour out. That goes to compost. Right, so I've got a steaming pan of lavender tea, just under boiling temperature. On top of that goes my colander, and then into my colander goes the honey. Now, I'm going to pour it in, and then as soon as it's gone through the holes, I'm just going to drop the jar into the colander, and I'm going to let the steam melt what's left in the jar so it just falls through the holes into the tea below, and I want the honey to melt and mix into the tea. This will take a little while, so I'll be back in a bit. Okay, all the honey is now in the pan. I'm just going to give it all a stir around. I want the honey to dissolve enough that it's not going to be separate from the water when it goes into the fermentation vessel. So today's fermentation vessel of choice is this glass demijohn. It holds 1 gallon or 4.54 litres. So into my demijohn goes 2 litres of spring water, straight out of the bottle. Okay, I'm now going to put this filter inside the funnel, because I did notice that there's some bits of lavender still in this pan, and I'm going to pour the pan in now, but I'm trying to avoid the bits of lavender going in there if possible. So now my lavender and honey tea, it's poured through. Lovely job. And you'll note that the filter has served its purpose. Okay, I'm now just going to add a bit more spring water. Just top it up, just about to the shoulders. If it forms a large krausen when it ferments and it comes out of the top, it's not a problem. I'll just put a blow-off pipe in. I'm just going to ensure that this is all nicely mixed together. I'm going to pour some into my hydrometer tube. So this is too warm to take the gravity at the minute, so it's going in the fridge. And I'll come back to it in about 25 minutes. Okay, the must is now exactly 20 degrees, so let's take the gravity. The original gravity, nice and buoyant, is 1.092, 1092. So I'm going to add my D47 yeast into there now. I'll add the equivalent of what I deem to be a good heaped teaspoon. That's my guesstimation. Alongside the yeast, I'm going to add some of this brewing wine yeast nutrient. Now, I didn't mention this in the ingredients at the beginning. I forgot about it, to be honest. But I'm going to add it in because I don't think it particularly needs nutrient, but it doesn't hurt, does it? And I've got it, so why not use it? Again, the equivalent of a good heaped teaspoon. So I'm just going to agitate this now. I want to get all the yeast that's stuck to the glass to wash off into the liquid, and it also helps to aerate it as well. That will do. And I'm just going to leave it here on my sink for a little while until fermentation started and I can determine whether or not I need to use a blow-off pipe. So I'll catch you in a bit. So just to show you that within 30 minutes of actually putting this in the demijohn, that fermentation has begun. We've got the beginnings of a krausen and we've got activity in the airlock. So all good. So unless there's anything unusual to report throughout the fermentation, the next film from me will be at the end of the fermentation when it comes to either racking or bottling. But if anything unusual does happen along the way, I'll be back. So catch you then, folks. Good morning from the kitchen, folks. Today is my Lavender Mead bottling day. Let's have a look at it. Here it is, and you will note that it is a cloudy drink. I cannot get this to come clear by natural form. I'm not going to put finings in it. I'm just going to bottle as is. I don't mind the colour actually, because it is kind of like a honey colour, and you know that's obviously what the mead is. I'm hopefully bottling today in just 750ml, but I have a 500 in reserve just in case. So in each of the 750ml, I'm going to put this amount of sugar, and this is a generous heaped teaspoon of sugar, and it's just standard household sugar, and this sugar is to give it a sparkle. So when the yeast, which is still in suspension in there, eats this sugar, it will cause a tiny fermentation, just a very, very small one. But a byproduct of that will be CO2, and when the CO2 builds up, that causes pressure, and the pressure is what gives you bubbles. So then it's bung out, siphoning tube in. I'm holding the tube steady with this clip. The bottom of the tube is there. In the bottom of the demijohn, there's a minor amount of sediment, but I don't mind if the first bit is sedimenty that comes out, because that is going into the hydrometer tube. Let's do it. And there we go, a bit gloopy to start with, but that's fine now. Doesn't smell like I expected, I must admit. I was expecting it to have more of a honey smell. We'll see how it tastes. Got some good reaction there with the sugar already. So there's definitely some life in this yet, even though it's not bubbled for quite a while. It's actually been inactive in the bubbler for probably the best part of 10 days. It's been in the demijohn for a month. Might have enough for 330, looking at what's in there. Yeah, there's not enough for a 500. There we go. Bubbles in the siphoning tube. So I've managed to get 5 750s and 1 330. I'm happy with that. I need to take the final gravity of my mead, so in goes the hydrometer. And it sank nicely, which is exactly what I wanted. And I've finished on a final gravity of 0.992. I need to work out the alcohol by volume for my mead, so I take the original gravity of 1.092. I deduct from that the final gravity of 0.992. That gives me 0.1. I multiply this by 131.25, and that equals 13.1%. Let's just say a 13%er. That is an outstanding result for my mead. I'm just going to have a little nifter because I've never actually made a full mead before, so I'm just curious as to what it tastes like. Wow, that's potent. If you'd given it me and told me it was a mead, I wouldn't have guessed it was a mead. I would have thought it was a really full-bodied, oaky, dry wine. Let's see how it matures in the bottle. So I've got my mead in my bottles, but now I need to bung them. And I've got my bungs here softening in very hot water. Take the first one out. You'll note that I'm wearing a black glove. This is to protect my hand from the ridges of the bungs because these can sometimes be a bit tricky. And that went in a charm. They won't all do. Oh, well, I seem to be having the best bunging day I've had for ages. No bother from any of them. Okay, I've got my bungs in place. I need to get the cages on now. So the cages will keep the bungs in place because when that little bit of sugar that I put in gets eaten by the yeast, and when that little bit of fermentation takes place and the CO2 is made, there'll be pressure. And the CO2 will build up pressure, and without these cages, the bungs are going to just fly off like missiles. Okay, so that's one done. You don't need to watch me do the rest because it's not that exciting. Okay, so I've got all my bottles caged. I now need to give them a rinse because they've got sticky residue on and I want them clean so I can label them. So I've got my one little bottle to crown cap, and I'm just going to show you that this is slightly different to a usual kind of bottle. The neck is slightly wider and it's got that screw top, and I think this is from a Budweiser bottle. And I always assume that Budweiser bottles wouldn't be very good to crown cap because of that screw top. But actually I did one the other day and it was really easy, so fingers crossed this will be. So I've got my bottle in a sink, so I'm pushing downwards. It's less likely to slip, and I've also got it on a silicone mat which is non-slip. Get the cap on the capper over the bottle, and let's hope that this goes nice and smoothly. Yep, that's capped nicely. So there's a very good tight seal. Looks good. I've got my bottle labels made up in a simple Microsoft Word template. I'm just going to print these off. So I need to get my labels on my bottles. So just put these on as neatly as I can do. I want my bottles to look nice. It's nice to make nice things, look a little bit professional, or at least like a good amateur. And there they are. Okay, so welcome to my conditioning room. Here are my conditioning shelves. On the bottom shelf at the back is a thermometer connected to this thermostat plug. When that plug drops below 19.5, it kicks in and it turns a heater on at the back of the shelves, and the heater stays on until it gets to 20.5. And now it's autumn. This will be on and off pretty much all the time. I'm going to condition my mead on this middle shelf just here. So I'm just going to place my bottles in. I will need to keep an eye and make sure there's no leaks, but usually I don't get any. So the conditioning process is the process whereby the yeast is going to eat the sugars that I've put in there and create the sparkle, and also hopefully enhance the flavour a bit. And there they all are. So the next film from me will be in about a month's time when it comes to opening and tasting. So I'll catch you then, folks. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. It's my Lavender Mead grand opening night. Now, it's been in the bottle for over 2 months. Actually, it's been in the bottle for 10 weeks. I forgot about it, to be quite honest. It got pushed to the back of a shelf and just left. So hopefully it's going to have a sparkle. I can see that the bung has raised by about 2 mil, so that's an encouraging sign, but you can never tell. So what do I want? Well, I want a sparkle. I want it to look good in the glass. I want it to smell nice. I want it to taste nice. I want it to taste like a mead. And I'd like it to have a bit of a lavender flavour. Is it going to have all them things? Is it going to have some of them things? Is it going to have any of them things? And I should say those things. But anyway, let's find out. Which of those will it have? Are we going to get a pop? Much of a pop, was it? That was a bit pathetic. Oh dear. Right, okay, it's time to not be excited any longer. Right, what am I going to get? Am I going to get any sparkle? Oh dear. It's not looking too healthy. Okay, so it looks like a sample I once gave when I was in hospital. Yeah, it smells a bit like it too. Yeah, this is not one of my greatest brews, I must admit. Now that's interesting. God, whoa! Whew, what's the ABV? 13%, right, I can tell it's 13%. It hits you, that's for sure. The word heady comes to mind. It's a heady brew. It's not fizzy. It's not even effervescent. It's flat as a pancake, right? So let's just get any idea of it being a sparkling mead out of the way and just concentrate on mead. Now, the honeyness is there, but it's a bit weird because it's a dry honeyness, and I've never had dry honey before. The constituency, the texture is a little bit syrupy, but the flavour is dry. A dry syrupiness. It's an uncomfortable match. I don't particularly think this is a great brew, in all honesty. As for the lavender, zero smell. Zero flavour. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. This one to me is not a great brew at all. If I was setting out to brew a still mead, then I could have probably been fairly happy with it. I mean, it's a 13% still mead. There is honeyness there, a dry honeyness, which is odd. But yeah, it's not what I set out to brew. I wanted to brew a sparkling mead, and I wanted it to have a bit of a lavenderness to it. So yeah, I'm going to have to put this one in the fail book, unfortunately. Some people would like this. Some people would say it's just fine. In fact, I'm sure my wife will think it's just fine, but it's not what I set out to brew. This one could end up being something that goes into the air still. Anyway, I'll finish this bottle off. I've got another 4 to do. So, cheers, folks. Better luck next time, and I'll catch you on the next brew. The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home and Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home and Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home and Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.